back to another episode, everybody. I am so thrilled as I'm sitting here with Emma Churchman. Thank you, Emma, for joining me today. I really look forward to our chat.
I'm so glad to be here and to be with you, Lindsay. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. You are a trauma chaplain and an executive mentor with over 25 years experience working with individuals, looks like businesses and organizations through trauma, which is such a normal thing in life. It seems a lot of us go through. And you also have a trauma recovery certification program, which I'm dying to hear about. And I noticed, and you can see as I'm looking at you, have two books out, one about Hurricane Helene and your experience through that. Sounds like you learned a lot and have a lot to teach us about it. And your latest book, which is called Unshattered, Surviving My Mother's 123 Personalities and Transforming a Legacy of Abuse. Just the title alone makes me want to give you the floor to tell us about your story. Just please share your own personal transformation and journey through trauma and how you reframed that in your life, because it looks like you've done that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And there's a lot that I could share with you, and there's a lot that people are super curious about. So, whatever questions you have is great. What
Okay.
I do want to say up front is that I'm not a fan of the word victim or a fan of the word survivor. I think really
Mm-hmm.
the lens through which we see ourselves and the experiences that we've had in our lives can have a profound impact on our ability to heal and our ability to transform. And I saw that play out in real time with my family. I have three younger brothers who all in the past 4 years have died by suicide.
Oh, no.
They made much different choices than I made, right? They very much saw themselves as people who suffered through and could not overcome trauma. And I'm saying that from my own lived experience. I do think that there are people who are suicidal, who are mentally ill, need therapy, need support. But I think in our family in particular, starting with our father, who also died by suicide,
Mm.
there was this kind of internal orientation, at least with the men in our family, that life was hard and wasn't worth working through. And my orientation has always been for more life,
Mm-hmm.
right? That there has to be a way forward. And I'm bringing that up because some of your listeners might not be ready for that kind of orientation. And then this is not the right conversation for them to be in,
No, I
right?
like that you say that. And I tend to agree with you. I think that
Okay.
the siding with victim and survivor is only looping in the same cycle that you think you can't get out of. It's just more of a grabbing a hold of that belief. And it's very, very strong. So, no, I think most of the listeners, I talk a lot about that stuff, will be very
Okay.
open to your interpretation. And may I just say, wow, I mean, I want to know, and you can get into this later, but how did you have such a different interpretation than the rest of your family? But maybe you can lead us to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm an old soul. I think I've incarnated before and kind of seen what I've gotten into. And I think that one of the reasons I'm here is to help humanity figure out how to move forward
Yeah.
and just looking at what's happening on our planet right now. So, for example, with natural disasters, since we just lived through Hurricane Helene last year, those have increased by 300% in the past decade,
Hmm.
which is significant. So, this idea that I will never be affected by a natural disaster because of where I live, we're 300 miles off the coast in the mountains here in Western North Carolina. We got impacted by a hurricane. So, this idea that we are immune to disasters is gone.
Yeah.
That's no longer relevant. So, the conversation needs to be how do we become resilient in the face of disasters, whether those be natural or otherwise.
Right. Just like fire and all the things you see all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so the orientation that I'm having is how do I support people to cultivate that resiliency? That is
Yeah.
my work in the world.
Yeah.
And it just happens to coincide with coming from a family that had a horrific legacy of abuse. and mental illness and suicide, and then also living through one of the worst natural disasters that has ever happened in the United States, and being married to a man who lived through Hurricane Katrina 20 years ago, right? So having
You
that
know,
experience too.
it sounds like you know how to ride the waves, Emma. I mean,
Yeah,
seriously, right? Isn't that what
yeah,
life is? It's a constant surge up and down. And the more you live through them, the more practice you get. So, can you take us into your, the story of your childhood? The title of your book is alluding to your mom having many personalities. Like, what was that like? Explain to us what that was and how that happened and how it affected you.
sure. Yeah. She always had them. I mean, even talking with my aunt, her older sister, she remembers when they were very little that my mother spoke in many different voices and
Hmm.
had different affects and interests. She was not diagnosed until I was, I think, 14 or 15 years old. So I didn't know any different. I just thought it was normal for a mother to get on the floor and want to play with crayons or want to
Mm.
play with dolls with me when I was little, or that it was normal that sometimes she was suicidal and sometimes she was functional because she was all these personalities were in the same body. So it wasn't until I became a teenager that I started to recognize that there were different things happening. And then when she got diagnosed and I got to officially know many of the different altars and their names and why they would come out and kind of what they were about, that it started to make sense.
Yeah. Can you explain to the listeners, like, what is that like? Like, what's happening with the altars coming out? Was your mom aware of her changing altars, or was it just she's not aware of? I'm just curious, like, how is that happening in the psyche?
Yeah, sure. So many people with multiple personality disorder, now known as dissociative identity disorder, may have a handful of alters, maybe a dozen after diagnosis. But there's one kind of core primary personality, and then the other ones pop in occasionally when they feel scared or upset or traumatized or
Hmm.
emotional or that kind of thing. Because my mother had so many personalities from such a young age, we cannot actually identify one core personality,
Mm.
right? There wasn't one person who was out most of the time and then other alters popped in. It was constant switching
Wow.
every day, all day long.
So, what was that like as a kid? I mean, you said it was just all you knew, but at some point you say you kind of started realizing it, like in high school. So,
Yeah.
what sparked your awareness that something was off?
I think it was the first time I saw her actively suicidal, attempting to end her own life.
Mm.
Um, and it was such a different version of her than the version I had seen the day before that I realized something was wrong.
Yeah.
And my father's response to that, I was the one who found her with her wrists slit.
Oh,
I
geez.
was 13 at the time, and my brothers were 11 and 5 and 1 at the time. So my father left the house and said, "You're in charge."
Oh,
And so that's when I really started to pay attention,
yeah.
right? Because he made it clear that my role was to be the vigilant one.
Wow.
So I learned to track very carefully everything that was happening with her.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started to see that there was a serious problem.
So, did he leave completely out of your life, or did he just kind of check out and let you handle it?
They got divorced within a year
Okay. So
because he
he's
got
gone.
very physically violent during
Okay.
that year.
So
Yeah.
you become like a mother, is what it
Yep.
sounds like. So were you
Yes.
taking care of your brothers, I'm assuming?
Yep.
Wow. So the responsibility on you at such a young age, was there any like voice or strong intuitive knowing that you were being guided into something, or was it all survival back then?
I didn't really think about it.
Hmm.
I didn't think about the onus of responsibility. I didn't think about next steps. my complete focus was on how do I keep all of my family members alive today?
Yeah.
Because for example, my brother Alex, by the time he was 6, he was suicidal.
Wow.
Uh, my brother Bryce, by the time he was 11 or 12, overdosed for the first time, and we almost lost him.
Oh, geez.
So it was very much trying to keep people alive. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of inward reflection.
No, there's no time for inward anything. I'm curious, your mom to have so many altars like that. And, we see Hollywood put out these, Sybil and all these multiple personality disorder. I know they've changed the name, like you said, to dissociative disorder, but like, was she traumatized? I mean, did she live her own trauma and this was her way of, creating an alternate identity through trauma? I mean, what is your understanding of her life experience?
Yeah, my understanding of anyone who has multiple personalities is that there's something that happens in the brain where a traumatic event will occur and the person will split off and hold that traumatic memory in
Right.
order for the primary person to be able to continue living. So, for someone to have 123 personalities, think about how many traumatic events happened. And I think it simply became a habit for her
Yeah.
because some of them evolved and came out when she was a teenager or in her 20s,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, because she simply learned that the way you deal with something traumatic is to disassociate.
Right. And that became her normal experience of
Right,
life. Yeah.
right.
Well, so at what point then, Emma, did you so you get out of high school, like what happens after this? Do you leave? Like, where do you go from here? I mean, you probably,
Sure.
and did you have anybody that you could talk to about this? I mean, as a kid, was there anyone you could confide in, or did you feel supported in any way? Or were you the support system?
No, I didn't. I mean, I would talk to some of the alters who knew there were other alters, and they would kind of help me understand what was happening on the
Hmm.
inside of her
Well,
mind.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and that was helpful.
So,
And then I did leave for college about 8 hours away, an 8 hour drive away. And at that time, we had a family friend who essentially moved in and was helping to care for my two youngest brothers
yeah.
while our mother was still in therapy. And then within a year of getting out of college, she had been in and out of psychiatric institutions for a decade at this point, and she was declared integrated, meaning that all of the alters were now integrated into one person. That didn't wasn't totally accurate, but there was a new personality who came out at the end of that time, who is out the majority of the time now.
Okay. So is your mother still living? Is
Yeah.
she recover? How is she now?
Uh, yeah, she is functional.
Interesting. And is she aware? I guess my question is, was she aware of all those altars or was herself as an identity protected underneath all that?
Well, again, there was no primary person.
Ah,
So even the altar that emerged after the integration was a new altar,
got
was
it.
not the original person. So some of the altars were aware, some others were not aware.
Right. That's a really interesting thing that the mind is really trying to protect someone, right? To not relive something. It sounds like it must have been horrible if she, like you said, to have 123 of them, there must have been a lot of trauma. So, man, and to just think today that is she able to live a normal life or that's amazing. So
Yep.
there's hope for people who are struggling in that department, right? That there's a way out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then tell us, how did you get to become? I mean, it sounds like you're very versed in trauma, right? But at what point did you recognize it as trauma or as a trauma childhood and that you wanted to help people?
It wasn't until I went to seminary that it really sunk in. I had already been running my own business at that point. I went to seminary when I was 30. I started my first business when I was 24. So I was already working with people. in a variety of ways, but part of the requirement for graduating from seminary was to do clinical pastoral education,
Hmm.
which is just like doctors have residencies in hospitals, chaplains have residencies in order to become ordained ministers. So I did two different residencies in two different hospitals and trained as a trauma chaplain. And I
Hmm.
realized, wow, I'm really good at this. I'm really
Yeah.
good at holding space for people who are in the worst moments of their lives and
Oh,
helping
yeah.
them navigate through that. So that really birthed this path towards trauma recovery.
Well, it sounds like you were basically getting your own education in it, growing up without knowing it, too.
Right,
Being able
right,
to handle crisis, there, not everybody can handle crisis, as I'm sure you come across all the time. There are
right.
certain people who are so solid during crisis that other people, you can just sense it. You just want to go to them and seek advice from them. So that's so amazing. I have a friend whose daughter is a chaplain as well. So what is that process like? How many years do you have to be going? You go into, I'm certain you're meeting with people who are dying in the hospital. How many years is that experience till you
It's
finish?
normally one. I
Mhm.
did between 1.5 and 2 years
Yeah.
of residency. But yeah, you're sent to different departments to support patients in different ways. The cancer ward or the heart ward or the maternity ward or the emergency room, in my case, the ICU. So you have different types of experiences. And the idea is that in those experiences, you're also confronted with your own trauma and your own responses. So you
Hmm.
learn how to work through those so that you can hold space for other people without getting triggered yourself.
Which is the key, right? It's got to
Yep.
be, yeah, because everything can trigger us to remember our own experience that wasn't so hot.
Yep.
So, can you share what did you notice with people like when you come into a family that obviously it's the energy has to just be devastating, right? When someone's passing, especially if it's sudden, right? Somebody's
Mhm.
suddenly and they're not prepared for this. What is it like? How do you feel a sense of a shift when you arrive and kind of comfort people? Like, what's your experience with that?
If I can be very direct, people love to die around me. Right? I didn't realize that until I started working in these hospitals. But it got to the point where in the first hospital, the ER doctors would come up to me and they'd be like, "Hey, Emma, what are your shifts next week? Because I don't want to be working them. Because I know that if I am, people are going to die." Right? Like literally don't want to work the same shifts. So, because when you are able to hold space for people in one of the two most significant life transitions they'll ever have, one being born and one dying, it's beautiful because it allows that person to relax and just be present in the experience
Yeah.
instead of trying to hold on for the family or, kind of all of that fear
Hmm.
is able to be dissipated when you're with someone like me or someone else who's trained who can simply hold space
Yeah.
and let you know that it's okay.
Well, and it's so amazing for people like you who do this work because it's a part of life. We're all going to meet that moment where we're passing on into the other world. And it's amazing to me how little our culture spends even preparing for a transition to the spirit realm or whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
It's so focused on you can't die, you can't pass on. It's like, well, there's no guarantee that all of us are living a long life here. And it's just nice to know that there's people like you who are holding space to let everyone know that it's okay. It's a completely normal process. But like you said, the grieving that goes on with the family is never easy.
No, not at all. And to let them know that it's okay too, and that they can ask me the questions about what to expect. A
Yeah.
lot of times there's so much mystery around death
Yeah.
that it causes people to be more anxious than they need to be.
Yeah. Do you ever see people who are like are not conscious, right? And then right before they pass, they come back and they're all of a sudden completely like awake and alive and then they go? Do you see that? Because
Yep.
I've seen people do that and I hear about it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's like all of a sudden they're and then they say their last thing and then they're gone. It's almost like they had a little knowing that they needed to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I've also talked to people who have technically died and come back to life.
Hmm.
And that's been really interesting because consistently all of them have said, I feel such a peace now with the possibility of dying, and I want to live life even more fully now.
Yeah. Yeah, that experience of dying before you die would shift your entire reality as you live, and it is possible to do that. So that's really interesting. So, how did you get from, trauma chaplain to then like helping with businesses and executive mentorship? Like how did that happen? Or did you always do that?
No, what I did always do spiritual direction,
Hmm.
accompanying people in their own spiritual journey. And then I started to notice several years into it that all of my clients were entrepreneurs. And I thought,
Hmm.
oh, that's interesting. But
Yeah.
then I realized, entrepreneurs, small business owners are making what can feel like life or death decisions,
Yeah.
sometimes all day long,
Right.
right? Really having to move forward in faith without having the assurance of a guarantee.
Yeah.
And I know how to be with people in that space of the unknowing.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to me personally. My husband was an entrepreneur, and not knowing if something happens, you don't have anything else is a real fear that lives out. But I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, to me, and this is my interpretation, it's like, we're all guided to where we need to be when we need to be there. So I just kind of flow with it. But it's a real fear, that fear of loss and lack and not having anything. And then, the mind just does its whole spiral. So,
Right.
it does.
Exactly.
So did you offer like, do you do one-on-one counseling with business owners or you do group things? How does that work?
Yeah, I mainly do private mentoring, but then through my trauma recovery certification program, that's where I work with groups.
Yeah.
So teaching them tools, evidence-based tools to help their clients manage traumatic events and
Yeah.
to learn how to process them in real time.
Yeah. Why do you think that, given that you've worked in this for so many years, but why do you think we are so ill-equipped? I mean, it doesn't seem like we get a lot of preparation for this in education or even in family situations, but what is that about? Like, we don't seem to have the ability to like process the information as it's happening, like in real
Right.
time. Yeah. What is your take on that?
Well, it's interesting. I'm writing my third book right now, which
Oh,
is coming
exciting.
out in June. So, yes, it is three books coming out within 16 months and my publisher acquired all of them, thank
That's so
God.
cool. Good for
Yeah, it's on
you. Congratulations.
thank you. It's on resilient leadership. And one of the things that I've been studying is why do we have this leadership model in worldwide that says when bad things happen, you need to buck up and move through it
Uh-huh.
and get over it as quickly as possible and never deal with it again,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Just and
Shut
so
up, don't
that's
talk about it.
yeah, that's been our orientation for thousands of years.
Yeah, it
So,
has.
of course, we don't know how to deal with trauma in real time because we're taught that if we do, we're weak. And
Hmm.
weakness is bad and wrong and makes us vulnerable, and therefore we cannot survive or thrive.
Yeah. That sounds like a big control of the ego for sure, right? Just making us feel weak when really it seems that if you are able to own whatever is happening and recognize it and work through it, that seems like strength to me. The person that, if we're pushing everything under the rug over time and the big fat elephant in the room is still sitting there, that seems like weakness to me. I mean, that's just where my mind is going. But
Yeah,
so tell us about your experience in the hurricane, and then we'll get into your trauma recovery program because I'm having a
sure,
feeling they go together. And so,
sure. Yeah,
what you live in North Carolina, and what part of North Carolina? You said the West, the
yeah.
mountains.
So, Western North Carolina near Asheville, which lots of people are
Oh, a lot
familiar
of
with.
people love Asheville. Yeah.
Yep, 3 miles off the coast. We live on the top of a 3,800-foot mountain.
Okay.
And so the hurricane was the rain was coming down for about 36 hours. We had 31 inches of rain in that time, which is unprecedented for
Yeah.
us. So that caused the river that runs through Asheville to swell an additional 27 feet above normal, if you can imagine that. So everything around the river was washed out completely.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then we live at the top of a gorge. So all of our mountains kind of come down and converge in this gorge that then goes down to Bat Cave and Chimney Rock. So there was a lot of coverage for Bat Cave and Chimney Rock because they are little tiny towns built up along this river that wiped out everything.
Wow.
And all of us are within like 4 miles of each other. And I live in a community of probably 300 people in rural Appalachia.
Okay.
And no one could get to us until day 4. So we were completely cut off. We had no power, um, no internet access, no way to, our local fire station couldn't even contact county headquarters because all of the communication systems were down.
We're down. Yeah.
And we live in mountains and hollers. So our fire department folks were going door to door bushwhacking because all of our roads were destroyed with trees down or mudslides,
Mm,
trying to figure out if people were alive,
right.
using basic walkie-talkies to try to communicate with each other. So that was our situation for the first 4 days. We live next to one of our firefighters and his wife, who's a sawyer. She's really good with the chainsaw. And so the four of us kind of
You
glommed
have to
onto
be
each
out there.
other. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to. I mean,
Yeah.
we had so many trees down.
Yeah.
So we spent the first month with them. We would go down to the fire station every day. So we would hike 3 miles down our mountain, bushwhacking because we couldn't use our roads, down to the fire station. Jeff, my husband, and I started doing that on day 4. And when I first got there, I said to the fire chief, I'm a trauma chaplain. How can I help? And he said, here's your first case. We had a 2-year-old who accidentally shot himself with a gun the day after the hurricane.
Oh, no.
Can you go attend to the family?
Oh, my God.
So that
This,
was my first case.
wow.
And I
This is
just
like
went from,
right after the
yeah,
rainfall. What? How did
yeah.
that happen? Was that just a freak thing?
It was just a freak thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. And then I was also attending to people who lost their houses or their cars or their pets or um, I don't think I attended to anyone who lost a family member, thank God.
Yeah.
Uh, but really just in that first week, trying to figure out if everyone was still alive. And other than the 2-year-old, everyone in our community was still alive.
Because that probably wasn't the case through all of those communities,
No,
I don't think. Yeah.
no. 108 people in North Carolina died in
Wow.
the hurricane.
You see the hype on the media, right? But I never know what to make or break of that situation. So it's nice.
Right.
I want, like, you were there. So what is it like? I mean, you said locally, your fire department is coming around. What about like the state or federally? Like, at what point are you receiving any kind of assistance from them, if any?
Yeah, we saw FEMA for the first time on day 27.
What?
Yeah,
27.
yes.
So, what is
Um,
that about, by the way? I mean, they
yes,
know, and there's
yeah,
a ton of money funneling through the federal government. Like, what
yes.
is going on there?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. So, as soon as I could, I started doing daily Facebook posts about what was happening here, boots on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
because we began hearing that the media was sharing a much different perspective than
Yeah.
our perspective. And those Facebook posts where I talked about things like FEMA's not here, not getting help,
Yeah.
need some help, they started spreading like wildfire.
Yeah.
And um, lots of people were reaching out and offering support. My husband started coordinating supplies coming in and communicating with people who were trying to find their loved ones. So we really became a significant presence on social media in the wake of the hurricane, trying to give voice to people like rural Appalachians who are traditionally underserved.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
I
there
bet.
was
Yeah.
plenty of support going to the city of Asheville, but not a lot in our little tiny rural area. So part of what I've done since the hurricane is a publisher reached out and acquired that first book, The
Mm,
Deep End of Hope in the Wake of Hurricane Helene, which was my journaling for the first 40 days.
yeah.
Edited, of course, but we got the book out in 45 days. And it
Wow.
was published on February 1st. It was one of the first books out about Hurricane Helene. So that's another way to give voice to people who are traditionally underserved. And then I went on a speaking tour for 5 months
Yeah.
and began speaking. For example, I keynoted at several conferences of disaster aid organizations, talking to them about what it looks like to serve underserved people. Just again, bringing awareness to some of the larger issues. And I'm actually beginning to do some work with FEMA now
Mm-hmm.
to both educate them about helping underserved populations, but also helping them find ways to more effectively reach underserved populations.
Right. Because that's a huge issue. They only
Yes.
want to go to the main, mega city metropolis,
The
when,
areas that are easier to serve.
yeah, yeah. But there's plenty of you there. That's like, so I have a question for you. Did you notice the power? There's two things. One, social media. You became an independent journalist on your own, sounds like.
Yeah.
And that I think is so awesome about today's journalism because, we've been spoon fed this mass media that we're supposed to listen to, which a lot of times is not what's happening as you experienced for yourself or anybody who's been featured on the media and the story's completely twisted knows right away that you're not always getting accurate information. So the cool part about you standing there is you're saying, hey, that's not what's happening. And then you get a publisher approach you that says, hey, let's get this story out. Like, that's
Yeah.
really awesome about the power of the people to actually have a voice. When the people today, especially if you're in a small community, think there's still no voice for you, you're like saying, no, that's not so. I am the voice. We are the voice.
Yes,
That is
absolutely.
that is so cool. Like, yeah, I always think we get smothered by the masses. And yeah, so what's your experience then with like, do you feel FEMA that you say they're willing to listen? You feel things are changing there to try to reach the underprivileged communities that don't get all the stuff that, people that are living in the city do?
Yeah, we're just at the beginning stages, so it's
Yeah.
too soon to tell. But the fact that I'm already having these conversations with very high up people
Yeah.
in the FEMA kind of hierarchy is quite encouraging to me.
Yeah. That is. That's really amazing. It sounds like you've sort of been led that direction by divine, I would say, the divine itself.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is you've got this trauma recovery program. Can you share it with us? And what is it all about? Give us a little taste of what you're offering.
Sure. Yeah. So the program is designed for coaches, healers, practitioners, as well as disaster aid workers to help other people, to learn how to help other people process trauma in real time. So I teach evidence-based trauma recovery tools. And then you have the option to become certified. So there are 3 levels to the program. The first level is where you build your own resilience. It's a 28-day online course that, just like I did when I was doing residency as a chaplain, where you work through your own trauma so that it doesn't impact your work with others. And
Yeah.
I'm offering that to your audience today for free, that level 1 program. So people can
Oh,
go to emma.churchman.com/trauma and sign up to download access to that program for free.
oh,
And
thank
then,
you.
yeah, absolutely. The second level is a 90-day group cohort where you learn my 10 trauma recovery tools and learn how to work with them in combination with your clients or the people who you serve. And then level 3 is also a 90-day group cohort where you become a master at utilizing the tools. You get to practice in different scenarios so that you're well versed in incorporating the tools and the methodology into your practice.
Well, and that is so needed because you just never know when something traumatic or unexpected is going to hit you, you know?
Right.
And the more you're prepared for it, the better it will be for anybody. So, anybody listening who maybe has been through trauma or just wants to be prepared, do you find that your community that you're in, are you guys like more prepared for another event than you were before? Or living in a rural community, I always find people are a little more prepared than the city
Yes.
folk. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, yes, we are much more prepared should this happen again. Certainly in my household, we now have a UTV,
Hmm.
utility vehicle. We have a radio system.
Yeah.
We have
You've got it all.
a lot of off-grid
Yeah.
components that we didn't have before.
Well, I think that's really important because I think, in learning through the pandemic, we have no clue when the powers that be want to shut down your life and shut down your food supply and all this stuff. So there is something to having a level of survival skills, knowing what to do, like you say, in live time. Like, what was it like during the hurricane? Did you have enough food and water? Like, what were you doing because no one was coming to you. So can you
Right.
share with us that part of it?
Yeah, and we didn't have power for 17 days. We have a generator. It was at 40% when the
Okay.
hurricane happened. So we rationed it for 1 to 2 hours in the morning and 2 to 3 hours in the evening. We did that for 17 days. Um, we live there are 8 houses in our HOA on 85 acres, and 5 of those houses are vacation homes. So when our neighbors who own the vacation homes were able to get a hold of us, they said, raid our houses, take
Wow.
everything,
Yeah.
even in the fridge. The food's going to go bad anyway. Just take all
Yeah.
the food. And so we did that. And then every night we would cook dinner with our next door neighbors, the firefighter and his wife,
Yeah.
to combine resources. And then we're on a well as well.
Oh,
So we're able to have access to water.
well, there you go. That's a good thing. You have your own water source. Because I can imagine in like a city where everyone's dependent on the city water and you
Right.
don't have water. I mean, it's a mess. It's a
Yeah, and
total mess.
Asheville didn't have water for 64 days because
So
the entire infrastructure was destroyed.
So this speaks volumes to anybody listening to have a little backup water supply. You can buy those
Yeah,
big tank water, or if you're in a rainy
yes,
climate, can't you collect rainwater and all that?
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it never hurts. I remember I always had friends growing up who were Mormons and they always had like a stock of food in the basement, My family
They were
didn't do,
smart.
yeah. And I was like, what is that about? And now I'm like, maybe they're onto something.
Yeah,
Never
100%.
hurts. Never hurts to have a little supply of what might happen if everything goes down. Yeah. So, what would you say, Emma? Look, you started off this chat with the victim and survivor and all this
Mhm.
stuff. So, what part of you, when you were young, decided not to attach to those terms? And then, can you share a little bit about how your brothers, seem to share the opposite of you? Because you say
Sure.
there was an extreme difference. I'm just curious, what was it about you that didn't want to do that?
I, I had, from a fairly early age, I had an orientation that things happen for me, not to me.
Hmm.
And when you have that kind of orientation, and I even saw this play out in Hurricane Helene, if you have the orientation of this is happening for me, not to me, it changes your whole perspective.
Yeah.
So when Hurricane Helene happened, and I thought to myself, oh, I don't know yet, but this is happening for me. And Hurricane Helene happened 6 weeks after my brother Alex died by suicide.
Mm.
And then 2 weeks after the hurricane, my brother Bryce died by suicide. Right. So compound grief. And I'm saying to myself, this is happening for me, not to me. That's when all of this, it's like everything broke open. I got the book deal. I
Mm.
got the social media presence. I developed this trauma recovery program. I went on this national speaking tour and really am so much more in the trenches of working with disaster aid organizations as a result. If I had said to myself, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, I'm just going to stay at home and feel sorry for myself and like only care about what's going on for me, I would have had a much different experience of the
Yeah.
hurricane instead of going down and volunteering and getting involved and saying there is a way through this.
Yeah.
So that fundamental orientation makes a difference. My brothers did not have that fundamental orientation.
Yeah. The victim was very loud. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, in a kind of a way, it's like they're teaching you also, you it's like I'm sure you can see it clearly in someone else when they're doing that. So like when you go down and volunteer during the hurricane and you're providing your services to help people, what is the common symptom of somebody who is going through an immediate trauma? And that could be of any kind, right? Whether it's disaster or whether something's just happened internally, externally, doesn't matter. What are the common symptoms you see on the immediate, experience with people?
sure. With Hurricane Helene for the first week, it was a lot of people needing to tell their story of what
Mm,
happened during the
mm,
hurricane, just over and over repeating themselves
mm.
as if they were trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
Then there was, after that first week, PTSD kind of set in, where people were not sleeping through the night, where they were forgetting to eat, where they couldn't track any information. I experienced that too. I had to have little post-it notes with me all the time, like eat breakfast, feed the dogs, that
Yeah.
basic level of reminding myself of what I needed to do, turn on the generator because I couldn't process that level of decision making. So
Yeah.
that's another symptom.
Yeah.
And then, really, the focus when you're in the immediate trauma is safety and stabilization. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you drinking water? Are you remembering to breathe? Do you have shelter? Do you feel safe? And not pushing beyond that, not going into, oh, but I need to be doing all these other things right now. No, you need to stabilize yourself first. And that's where a lot of people um, maybe don't mean to, but can harm themselves by jumping ahead of attending to what needs to be attended to first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It really is like taking care of those basic needs, the basic survival needs at first. Because I'm sure like you said something interesting is people are repeating what happened. It's almost like you're just reliving the moment over and over. So do you notice that that plays into PTSD then as somebody that would experience PTSD for years and years and years later, where they're continuing to go back to that memory and relive it like it's currently
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah, which is why trauma recovery tools are so important because
Mhm.
there are actually ways to circumvent that and to
Yeah.
stop that pattern.
Yeah. So can you give an example of like what you say to people? How do you what's a tool that you can say, like, let's say I'm reliving a moment that I could implement immediately to get me to realize one, that's not happening anymore, and how you like reframe it, almost like it's a neural pathways reframing, in the
Yeah.
nervous system. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, what's another way to think about what happened?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I notice you're focusing on that your car is covered in mud, but you're not focusing on the fact that all of your children are still alive,
Yeah.
right? So where is your orientation right now?
That's so good. That's such a simple, it seems, right? Like that seems like a simple transition to make, yet it's not so simple for people, right? To just, as you notice, like in your family, they couldn't step out of it. It's
Right.
amazing. So, what do you notice with people that have the power to choose? I guess it's a choice, right? We're making this decision. I don't have to do that anymore. And even if
Mhm.
it's not going to remedy itself overnight, right? I'm still making the choice to try it differently. What is the time you see people that take to just go through this and then actually feel sound again,
I think it depends on how resourced they are. There are people in our community still who aren't sleeping,
Wow.
but
And
others who are rebuilding, reconstructing,
yeah,
creating something new out of what happened.
Yeah, it's so sad too, because when you see like the potential that's sitting there for someone, but they
Right,
just can't step out of it. And I guess, there's a respect there too, right? For every person that wherever you are on the path is where you are. And just
right.
pouring unconditional love into people where they are is really important. Do you find you do that a lot as part of your service you offer?
Sure. On a good
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to say, like, suck it up. Come on.
I
You
know.
can do better.
A little straight talk sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes people need to hear that too. Like
Yeah.
they're not,
Right.
not they're not going to hear it in this nice, loving way. If you like directly, it's like a kid. You just directly state it. They might hear you.
Exactly. Yeah. I just wrapped up a client call before you and I jumped on this where I had to say, the way that you're thinking about this is not working for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to get beyond it if you keep down this line of thinking that you're on.
Well, and that's honest. It's true. If you continue on the same circular patterning in your mind, nothing changes. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. Yeah. Well, this has been so awesome to talk about because I feel like the more and more, like you said, there's more and more natural disasters, but there's a lot of, the world presents with trauma all the time. People go through
Yeah.
difficult situations, and that you're sitting here offering preparation tools that not only could help somebody prepare, but those people that need it in the moment is so wonderful. So before we kind of end today, Emma, I want to just like have you share any last thought you want to leave the listeners with, and then please tell us where we can find you.
Yes. Everything that has ever happened has happened for you. Just take in that reframe. The next time something happens to you and you're saying, oh my God, why did this happen? What does this have to teach me in this moment? What is another way that I could be thinking about this? You can find me anywhere on social media. My website is emmachurchman.com, and you can check that out. There are a bunch of resources on the site, including details about the trauma recovery program. And again, go to emmachurchman.com/trauma to download level 1 of the trauma recovery program for free.
Well, and thank you so much for offering that. I will make sure to link everything in the show notes. And thank you for being here and being the shining light that you are for other people.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Good to be with you.